All right, today we're going to be discussing circadian rhythms. So this is one of my favorite topics, something that I started implementing with people that I work with right away because it's such a foundational process. I find it's often overlooked, so not enough people are focusing on this. We tend to hyper focus on diet or exercise or whatever it is, but if you don't have this foundational piece in order, then the rest of what you're doing is not going to work too well. At least in my opinion, if you don't fix this, you're probably not going to achieve optimal health. So let's get into it, starting off with what circadian rhythms are. So there's a couple of different definitions. A lot of people think of this as your sleep-wake cycle, which is accurate, but it's kind of an oversimplification. So we'll go into more detail on that later, but that's a good way to think of it to start off. So it's the natural internal process that regulates the sleep-wake cycle. So it repeats roughly every 24 hours. So if you break down the word circadian, circa means approximately and DM means 24 hours. So it's roughly a 24-hour cycle. And a more scientific definition, I guess, is that it refers to any biological process displaying an endogenous and trainable oscillation of 24 hours. So any biological process displaying an endogenous, which that means within the body, entrainable oscillation. So entrainable means that there are external stimuli or factors that can influence this. So we're going to talk about those a little bit later. These rhythms are driven primarily by, you have two clocks. So a central clock, which is within the brain, that's the important one. And you also have peripheral clocks throughout the cells of your body. That information isn't as important, but basically there's one master clock in the brain. It's kind of regulating this whole symphony. And this is widely observed, not just in humans, but all living organisms. So obviously in other animals, but also bacteria, fungi, parasites, all sorts of living organisms. So this is a common graphic that you see that kind of gives you an overview of some of the different things that the circadian mechanism regulates. So if we start over here on the left, so you're going to have this sharp rise in your blood pressure first thing in the morning. So this is due to a spike in cortisol, which that's not mentioned on here. That's also when your melatonin secretion stops. If you go a little bit later on in the day, this is when you have your highest testosterone secretion. So if you've ever been to the doctor and they'll tell you for blood work for testosterone, you need to do that in the morning because that's when it's going to be highest. And you have a bunch of other hormones that are also that are either secreted or released based on this 24-hour cycle. If you go into the afternoon, this is when you have some peak physical performance. So your best coordination, reaction time, cardiovascular efficiency, and muscle strength, as well as a peak in blood pressure and body temperature. And then later on in the night, you're going to have your melatonin secretion start, which kind of brings you into that sleep phase. Bowel movement suppressed. Obviously, you don't want to be doing that at night. And then you're going to reach some deep sleep, low body temperature, and all these things just kind of naturally happen without you having to think about it. So this is what the circadian rhythm is. And as you've just seen, this goes far beyond just sleep. So there's a bunch of other things that are also implicated. For example, your cellular function. So your cells are doing totally opposite jobs at night versus during the day, right? So your gene expression, that's going to be regulated by circadian rhythms. Your mitochondrial function, extremely important for energy. Repair and regeneration. So detoxification kind of fits in there as well. That stuff is all going to be happening at night. Your cells aren't doing that during the day. That needs to occur at nighttime. So you need to make sure that circadian rhythms is intact. Your hormones. So we already talked about testosterone, for example. So, all of these are going to have natural peaks and valleys. They're going to be released or synthesized at certain times. So insulin's an important one for blood sugar regulation. Thyroid hormone, right? If you notice, if you take it, you don't take thyroid hormone at night. You have to take it in the morning based on the circadian rhythm. Sex hormones, aside from testosterone, and then melatonin and cortisol. Those are kind of the two big ones, the major yin and yang hormones of this whole cycle. So cortisol is going to spike in the morning, give you that energy for the day, and then melatonin is the yin hormone that calms you down and is responsible for all that repair, regeneration, detoxification, all sorts of that stuff at night. Another one is your metabolism. So this is this is very overlooked in weight loss, especially. So your fat burning or fat storage, for example, that is all going to be regulated by this, and you want to be doing most of that at night. But if this mechanism isn't working properly, you're not going to be able to shed that fat no matter what you're eating. And blood sugar fluctuations, also microbiome. So this is kind of a growing field of research. Well, both circadian rhythm and microbiome, but also how those come together. So your microbiome, like I said, every living organism, they have their own circadian rhythm. So even the gut bacteria or the fungi or the parasites that are in your body, they're also going to be functioning based on this. So circadian rhythm is actually it's a subset of something called chronobiology. So this is the study of all biological rhythms and cycles. So again, we kind of focus on circadian rhythms because it's easy and understandable, but we also have these smaller cycles that are called ultradian rhythms, which are less than 24 hours. So if you think about the sleep cycle, for example, you're going to go through different REM cycles. That's your rapid eye movement cycles when you're sleeping. Same with deep sleep. So we have these microcycles within the circadian rhythm, and we also have infradian rhythms, which are greater than 24 hours. So the most common one would be the menstrual cycle, for example, which is tied to the lunar cycle. And beyond that, you have different seasonal cycles as well. But just to give you an idea, it's not just 24-hour cycles that we want to be concerned about. It's all of these, which kind of fall under the umbrella of chronobiology. Okay, so we mentioned earlier that the circadian mechanism is entrainable to external factors or inputs. So these are called Zeitgebers. I'm not sure. I don't speak German. If you do and you know how to say it, you can just post in the comments. So these are the time givers. These are the things that regulate that central mechanism, that central clock in your brain, and tell it, what's going on in the environment and how to react. So the most important one by far is light. So not just the presence of light. So we want to be getting plenty of sunlight during the day, but also darkness. The absence of light is equally important to regulate this. Temperature as well. So during the day, it's typically warmer. At nighttime, when temperature goes down, that's also going to have an influence on this. Your food intake, particularly the timing. So when you're eating is just as important as what you're eating, in my opinion. Exercise as well, and the timing of that. Electromagnetic fields, so both non-native and native EMFs is how we distinguish those. So non-native are things that are not naturally found in nature. So that's going to be your cell phones, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, all that sorts of stuff. And then the natural EMFs, for example, the Earth's magnetic field. So both of those are going to have an impact on our circadian rhythm. And social interaction is the last one. Okay, so these are some hunter-gatherers, and this is our goal. This is what we want to do with our circadian rhythm. We want to try to mimic our ancestors and live like our hunter-gatherers. And I know it's not possible in today's world, but we can learn a lot from them because this is how we're biologically designed, right? We often forget that we are animals at the end of the day, and we have biological needs. So we need to try to mimic that environment as much as we can. So from the hunter-gatherer perspective, you're going to be waking up with the sunrise, okay, and going to bed after it gets dark out. So if you've ever been camping, this is what happens. You naturally just wake up because it gets bright, and then once it gets dark, you get tired pretty quickly. You might have a fire, but you're not up, too late after the sun sets. They're always outside. So naturally, we wouldn't have all this temperature control. You're going to have a natural dip in temperature at night, which kind of gets you into that sleep mode, and then a rise in body temperature in the morning. A rise in your environmental temperature in the morning, which helps get you out of bed. You're going to hunt and gather and eat during the day, right? So they don't open up the fridge at 9 p.m. and grab a snack. They're being active during the day, doing all their exercise when the sun is up, going out, hunting animals, gathering, whatever it is, and eating that food during the day. And of course, there's no artificial or non-native EMFs. So, they're not using cell phones or on computers, any of that sort of stuff. And they're always connected to the earth. So often barefoot or wearing shoes that are conductive. So you're always getting these inputs from the earth that also help to entrain this mechanism. Then contrast that with the modern human. So how we managed to completely trash our circadian rhythm in 1 century. So obviously, I'm not like anti-technology or anything. We've come up with all these great, wonderful inventions, but they come at a cost, and we need to make sure that we're using them responsibly. So, for example, the light bulb, somewhere I think it's in the late 1800s, this was invented, and since then we basically have light whenever we want. So prior to that, there was no such thing as artificial lighting. So besides sunlight, you had, I guess, moonlight and starlight at night, and fire. So fire was like, the OG artificial light technology. But now we have light at all hours of the day, and this really messes up our circadian rhythm. And as you probably know, I don't know about the Canadian statistics, but in the US at least, people on average spend 90% of their time indoors. So we really have this backwards because we're not getting the natural sunlight, but we're also exposing ourselves to artificial light at all hours of the day. So that's a big issue. And obviously that's become, we've taken that a step further with screen technology, and we're on screen 24/7, especially now. And the problem with light bulbs too is that they actually, the original incandescent bulbs weren't too bad because they had more of a balanced spectrum. But now LEDs and compact fluorescent bulb CFLs, halogens as well, they're quite high in blue. So if you look at a spectrometer, which measures the different light frequencies that come out of these things, they're extremely high in blue, which really messes up our circadian rhythm. So we also have air conditioning and heating, which is wonderful to stay comfortable, but we never have these temperature extremes. We also have refrigerators, grocery stores, Uber Eats, so you can eat from the moment you wake up to the moment you go to bed. There's no more fasting window or eating just during the day anymore. We have indoor gyms, so that doesn't help either, because we can you can work out whenever you want. If you picture yourself camping, it's not like you're doing a HIIT workout right before you go to bed, right? But now you can go under artificial lighting, work out whenever you want, and that also messes things up. The electrosmog or electropollution is very bad, and it continues to be an issue that doesn't seem to have an end in sight. But our Wi-Fi, cell phones, Bluetooth, all that stuff does not help. And I know shoes weren't invented in the last century, and they're much older than that, but we're not connected to the earth anymore. So we used to always be barefoot or wearing shoes. Like, for example, the natives wear moccasins that are made of different animal hides, which are still conductive. So you can still actually get those electrons from the earth and have that natural electromagnetic field to regulate our circadian rhythm. But now we don't have that. We also don't spend much time outside. So double whammy there. Too many non-native EMFs, not enough natural EMFs. And then social media. So as I said, one of those Zeitgeibers was social interaction. So I'm sure you've noticed this. If you're having, in-person stimulating conversation, that doesn't help if you're trying to go to bed. I noticed this really became apparent to me after I did a 10-day silent meditation retreat. So on the 9th day, you're allowed to talk to people, and they even warned us ahead of time. They said, try not to be up too late talking to people because you're not going to be able to sleep. And I was like, I don't know what you mean. Like, I never have issues falling asleep. I'm sure it won't be a problem, but I hadn't talked to anyone in 9 days. So the conversation was so stimulating that I literally, I could not sleep that night because it just, your brain's just going. And the same thing happens to a smaller degree when you're on social media, right? So if you're texting people or whatever, messaging, looking on Instagram, that social connection also keeps you up and disrupts that circadian rhythm. Okay, so here are some signs or symptoms of a disrupted circadian rhythm. So the first and most obvious one is fatigue. So people who can't get out of bed to save their life, they're always hitting snooze, just general low energy, but especially in the morning. So that's a sign of it's called the cortisol awakening response that's not working properly. So I talked a little bit about how your cortisol should boost in the morning, and that gives you this natural spike of energy. So it's a stress hormone. It often gets demonized, but it is very important in the morning. But when people don't have that because their circadian rhythm is messed up, then you can't get out of bed. Insomnia, that's on the other side of the spectrum. So you have an irregular sleep schedule, or you can't fall asleep, can't stay asleep, just poor sleep quality in general. That's a major sign. Some of the less obvious ones are going to be weight gain and appetite dysregulation. So, like I said, your body should be burning fat at night if you have a proper circadian rhythm. Your mitochondria are going to be using up all that fat because you're in a fasting state. But if you're eating too late at night or exposing yourself to too much artificial light, that can disrupt things, and then you might have issues with weight. And again, appetite dysregulation. So, being hungry at the wrong times. And I notice this is very common. So I'm a big fan of intermittent fasting and time restricted eating. But what a lot of people do is they skip breakfast and have like a late lunch or something like that. And then they end up having this huge meal at dinner. And like it's a late dinner often, so like 8, 9 p.m. And that kind of shifts your whole circadian rhythm later than you want it to be. So ideally, you're going to be eating most of the food during the day when you're active and when your body is primed to be digesting this food. So if you're someone who wakes up in the morning, has no appetite, and then you have this, you're voracious at night, that's also a sign that your circadian rhythm is not on point. This can also translate into several different mental health issues. So when I was speaking about the neurotransmitters before, for those to be produced properly and released, you need to have this mechanism intact. And this can honestly tie into just about anything. So if you look at the research now, a disrupted circadian rhythm is implicated with so many different diseases because it's such a foundational process that that's involving all of your cells, but also the different microbes. And so our whole ecosystem is dependent on this circadian rhythm. But when that's out of whack, then it can kind of manifest in a number of different ways. But in a nutshell, it's that feeling of being jet lagged. So you just have low energy. You're tired at the wrong times. You're napping here and there. Appetite's kind of messed up. So that's a good way to think about it. Okay, so this might be a little difficult to read, but so if you have a healthy clock, you have good sleep, good cognitive ability, alertness, cardiovascular ability and muscle strength, blood pressure is well regulated, liver functions on point, and then this is an important one, the pancreas release of insulin and glucagon. So all of your cells, including the cells of the pancreas, for example, that are releasing insulin to regulate your blood sugar, are going to depend on this. So there's actually studies showing that excessive blue light or artificial light can increase your glucose levels. And now we know that it's not just food necessarily. Obviously, that's a big part of something like diabetes. But if you have a circadian rhythm that's out of whack, you can end up getting diabetes totally independent of what you're eating. Okay, and this goes for all your organs. They're all relying on this clock. So you could end up getting, even if you think you're doing all the right things, if your circadian clock is not healthy, then you could end up with a number of different diseases. And for liver function, there was actually a study I read, I think it was prescription painkillers after surgery and measuring the effectiveness of them based on when they were administered the drug. So, and it showed that when you take it during the day, it has a much greater effect than at night. And it makes sense, right? Because your liver shouldn't be processing these things at night. You want to be doing, using those things during the day. Alcohol would be another good example. If you've, I'm sure you notice if you're drinking during the day, you end up having pretty good sleep and not feeling terrible the next day. But if you're eating or drinking a bunch at night, then that's going to disrupt your liver function. You're not going to be metabolizing that alcohol as well. It's going to disrupt your sleep, and then you end up with a hangover. Okay, so some of the things that contribute to a good circadian rhythm, so time-restricted eating within a tight window and not too late at night, healthy light exposure, so getting plenty of natural light and avoiding the artificial light as much as you can, and then regularity and sufficient sleep. So the regularity is an important part. You want to develop a good schedule that your body can get used to. So if you have a disrupted clock, a lot of the opposite symptoms. So you're going to have poor sleep quality, depression, mental health, cardiovascular disease, high blood pressure, could get fatty liver disease, insulin resistance, type 2 diabetes. And some of the things that can cause that are shift work, jet lag, aging, and an erratic, I think that says erratic, probably not erotic, erratic lifestyle. So when you don't have a good schedule. And here's some signs of a healthy circadian rhythm. So energy, jumping out of bed in the morning with lots of energy, around the time of the sunrise. And even if you're not jumping out of bed, you should have good energy to wake up. You don't have to hit snooze all the time. And then you should be able to maintain that energy throughout the day. So not having all these dips, but having good stable energy. You have good quality and quantity of sleep. So no issues falling asleep, staying asleep. You wake up well rested in the morning. You should have a healthy metabolism, no weight issues. You shouldn't have the need to do any extreme dieting. You should be able to eat within a fairly tight window and not be super hungry all the time. And just be able to maintain a good, healthy weight without too much effort. You should also have great mood and good mental health, and overall just be disease-free. So once your circadian rhythm gets intact, you do notice a difference. This is one of the things that I personally noticed once I started implementing a lot of these things. And it's very basic, but you just need to think, how would my ancestors live in tune with the light and dark cycles? So that's it for today. I didn't go too much into detail about specifics of what to do. I'll do that in another video, or you can also check out naturoacademy.com. So I've written some articles on there about circadian rhythm, and we post lots of free content just about all things health optimization. You can also follow us on Instagram, just Natural Academy. And if you're looking for some blue blocking glasses, which are another effective tool to help block out some of the blue and regulate those, regulate your light environment, you can also check out Natural Academy. We have some on there. This is a little showcase of the Solidagos. These are the frames you want to wear if you want to look smart. So get your pair today. Thanks for watching, guys.